Gen Z is violently revolting everywhere in the world right now. And these aren't just your same old protests anymore. They're literally toppling governments, overthrowing corrupt leaders, and burning a system that's no longer working for them down into the ground. And that's because they've woken up, they've unplugged from the matrix, and they've realized that everything you've been told about the economy is a lie. Of course, if you've clicked on this video, you already knew that. But the rabbit hole goes much deeper than you even think. The minimum wage could be $25 per hour right now, without having any impact on prices or inflation at all. Zero. We could have a universal basic income of over $1,000 a month for every single person, without raising prices or inflation by even a single dollar. We could all have a house, all have enough food to eat, all have our basic needs and even some luxuries covered without needing to work even a single extra hour. This isn't some futuristic, idealistic utopia I'm theorizing about here. This is all already possible right here and right now in the current world we live in today. And as you will soon see, I've done the research, crunched the numbers, and analyzed the statistics to back up what I'm saying with cold, hard facts. We'll get into that soon enough, believe me. But for now, just envision a world where this is possible. How would it make you feel if you found out that you were forced to toil away at your soulless, miserable job, not because it was needed to keep society running as they tell you, but purely because some narcissist created the illusion of scarcity so that they could keep you enslaved? You'd probably be infuriated, and rightfully so. Well, keep that energy throughout this video, dear viewer, as the first step towards creating a better system one day is to first dismantle all the lies this current one was built upon. Scarcity. This is the fundamental principle a lot of neoliberal economic viewpoints are built upon. Resources are scarce and limited, and this is why we have to work for them. In the world of Star Trek, there was a device known as a replicator that could just print out unlimited amounts of whatever food you wanted for free with zero energy cost. In a world like that, we could all agree that it wouldn't make sense to force everyone to work a 9-to-5 anymore. And that's exactly why the people of Star Trek don't work. See, Gen Z isn't lazy. We're just way ahead of our time. Now, we're not living in the Star Trek future. Not yet, anyways. But we do have way more than enough resources as is to ensure that everyone's able to live a dignified life without having to work. This isn't me trying to make a feel-good inspirational speech here. This is based on true, cold, hard facts and numbers. Let's get into it. Part 1, the minimum wage. Economics is not an exact science. It is not physics, chemistry, or biology. And this is why mainstream economists are often wrong about so many things. If we were to drop an object from our hand, we know it will end up hitting the ground 1 trillion out of 1 trillion times. We can predict this with 100% accuracy because physics is an exact science. Big economists apply this same logic to the economy, and it makes sense on the surface level. If you were to raise the minimum wage, it only makes logical sense that if you have to pay your workers more, you'd have to raise prices to compensate as well. But as you're soon about to see, economics is not a simplistic, exact science. It's anything but that. The book Freakonomics does a great job of exposing this. It's one of the defining books that shaped my worldview in my formative years. In 1999, an Israeli daycare center was having a serious issue with parents leaving their kids way longer than they were supposed to. So in an effort to reduce late pickups, they started issuing fines to parents who were more than 10 minutes late. Logically, on the surface level, you'd think this would solve the problem or at least improve it. But alas, the economy is not physics, biology, or chemistry. It is not an exact science, and what happened next shocked everyone. Late pickups actually doubled after the fine was introduced. But why? Well, it turns out once the parents knew that they were going to be late anyways, paying the fine psychologically gave them the permission to show up late without feeling guilty for it. In their minds, they had already compensated the daycare for the extra time for looking after their kids, so who cares at that point? This is just one of many examples of how economics is such a volatile, unpredictable mess with lots of moving parts, and why it's a mistake to view it as a simple exact science like math or physics. So if you're wondering why big economists are often wrong about so many things, this is exactly it. They view economics with a simple-minded black and white lens, when in reality, it's anything but that. And perhaps nowhere is this more evident than the debate about the minimum wage. Big economists who criticize the minimum wage love to default to the knee-jerk reaction of, but companies will have to raise prices. The problem with this logic, however, is that it's assuming these massive corporations who refuse to pay the minimum wage are operating on the absolute limit profit margin-wise. Spoiler, they're not. It's clear that these so-called economists just regurgitate what they heard on Fox News and have never done any actual research, read a financial report, or looked at the actual numbers or data. So let's do this for them. Amazon profited $59 billion in 2024. This is pure shareholder profits. It has nothing to do with business operating costs or expenses. All of this money could theoretically be given back to the workers without raising prices by even a single cent. So, what would this mean for the average Amazon worker? The average Amazon worker makes about $35,000 per year. There are 1.5 million Amazon employees worldwide. Divide 59 billion by 1.5 million, and you get a staggering figure of $39,333. This is how much extra money Amazon could pay every single one of their employees every single year without having to raise their prices by a single dollar. This means that right now, every Amazon worker could be making $75,000 per year, a comfortable middle-class salary, while having absolutely zero impact on prices or business operations whatsoever. And now you see the point of this video. Scarcity is a lie and a myth, or at least greatly exaggerated. Big economists make the minimum wage out to be some super scary communist concept that these poor multi-billion-dollar businesses who are just barely scraping by can't afford. But the actual numbers and data tell a complete different story. So now that we know the actual facts and logic, let's apply this to several of our other favorite poor multi-billion-dollar businesses as well to see how much they're lying to us. Walmart ran a net profit of $15.5 billion in 2024. Again, this is total net profit after all business operating costs have been accounted for. Walmart employs 1.6 million people in the United States, so if we quickly do the math, we see that they could pay their employees nearly $10,000 extra every single year without having to raise their prices at all. Starbucks ran a total net profit of $3.761 billion in 2024. Starbucks employs 361,000 people globally speaking. This means they could give every single barista an extra $10,000 per year, again, without having to raise prices by a single dollar. These are the cold hard facts and numbers. They could be paying their workers much more. They're just choosing not to. The whole idea that they'd have to raise prices is just a total gaslighting lie. Johnny Harris recently made a great video about this where he was investigating why food prices got so damn high. During the height of the pandemic, we were all told that egg prices soared because of an avian bird flu breakout. But when he actually dug deeper and delved into the financial reports of Cal-Maine Foods, the top egg producer in the United States, he found that there was no change in business operating costs at all. We should have seen a significant increase in business expenses if they were really being hampered by the avian flu, but we didn't. We did, however, see a significant increase in one other metric: shareholder profits. Surprise, surprise. This suggests that the avian flu was merely a smokescreen as an excuse to raise prices for the sole purpose of profits. Cal-Maine Foods is now under active investigation by the DOJ for price fixing and manipulation tactics. This is the real reason you see prices go up every time they raise the minimum wage. It's not because they need it to fund business operations, it is because they just don't want to pay their workers more, and they use the minimum wage as an excuse to gaslight the public. So let's be clear about one thing here. We live in a capitalist society and economy. If they want to pay their workers less, that's their free market right to do so. But what they don't have the right to do is constantly lie, gaslight, and manipulate us into thinking that there's some struggling, poor corporation barely operating at the profit margins, and that if we raise the minimum wage, they'd have to raise their prices. The facts and numbers prove that this is just a total gaslighting lie. Just admit it and be open and honest about the fact that you're paying your workers less purely because of greed and not out of business necessity. Hey guys, just wanted to say thank you all so much for this incredible, rapidly growing community we're building here. You may have noticed we're getting very close to 40,000 subscribers now. This is just crazy, guys. So if you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us get closer to this magic number. Thank you all so much. Part 2, universal middle class income. You've heard me talk a lot about universal basic income here on this channel, but after researching the numbers and facts for this video, I actually believe I didn't take it far enough. The truth is, we actually have enough resources to where we could provide a middle class income for everyone without having to work. A third of all food in the US is wasted. That's a staggering amount. It's even more heartbreaking when you think of all the animal suffering and sacrifice farm animals have to go through just to be wasted in the end anyways. We have more than enough houses already built to house everyone. We just choose not to because, well, hard work is a virtue, I guess. This gets even more ludicrous when you consider the fact that a single homeless person costs over $35,000 of taxpayer money between healthcare services, the criminal justice system, public space management, etc. We've gotten to a point where we'd rather pay $35,000 per year to keep someone homeless than give them an existing house to live in. As you can see, money is not the issue here. Scarcity is not the issue here. We as a society just have such a sick obsession with work that we'd rather pay people a lot of money to be homeless than just give them a place to stay. Food and shelter are the most basic of human needs, and as you can see, we have more than enough to cover everyone's basic needs without the need for extra labor from others. In a previous video I made, I covered a lot of the ways unemployed people actually save the economy money and are a way lesser burden than those who work. Big economists love to lecture us about how nothing is free, which is why we should be forced to work. But just like their gross misunderstandings on basic economic concepts, which they're supposed to be experts on, a key factor they've overlooked is that if nothing is free, then having a job itself isn't free either. You have to go into insane levels of student loan debt just to even be considered for a job. You have to pay a ton of money for a car to get to work, which has an undeniable negative carbon footprint on the environment. Someone who's unemployed is less likely to have the myriad of health issues compared to someone who works, and thus is less likely to be a burden to the healthcare system, etc. When I did the math and calculated all the savings an unemployed person generates, it comes out to around $1,000 a month or $12,000 per year. I'll link the video below for those of you who really want a full breakdown of the numbers. When I made this video, I didn't even factor in all the wasted food and empty houses that are readily available everywhere, and thus, after you factor that in, you realize we have enough resources to where everyone could have enough housing, food, and $1,000 a month in universal basic income without affecting inflation at all. This is all before we've even talked about the AI revolution, by the way, and all the wealth set to be generated by it that should also be taxed into a universal basic income. So when you look at it all from this perspective, you realize we're not working because we have to. We're working because we're being forced to via engineered poverty. Engineered, meaning this capitalist society has created this artificial illusion of scarcity to keep us working and miserable. And they tell us that this is just how it has to be, but the numbers show otherwise. But why does it have to exist? Well, there was an interesting exchange that happened on one of my posts a while back that I think sheds some really interesting light on this. I found an interesting Reddit comment that really perfectly explains it. We are born worthy and valuable. Humans don't need to earn a living. We deserve a living, and a select group of narcissistic people have taken over the world and made everyone believe the opposite. This is why slavery isn't stopping anytime soon. Too many people are indoctrinated. To the surprise of absolutely no one, I totally agreed with the sentiment and had to reshare it. There was, however, one interesting response. OP is making the critical mistake of making a narcissistic demand and saying that everyone else owes them something in exchange for nothing, while trying to paint people they demand favors and material gifts from as narcissists. This is called projection. Go ahead. Tell everyone more about how bad of a person they are for just not giving you their personal stuff. I'm sure they'll all agree and hand it over with a smile, you dumb crybaby. So this is a common rebuttal I get on a lot of my videos when describing the subject. And it's a perfect example of how people have been brainwashed by engineered poverty and artificial scarcity. They basically think that resources are so scarce, which means if you don't want to work, someone else has to work to support you. But this is just objectively and scientifically inaccurate. Most of what you're paying in rent comes from the value of the land and not of the house. This is why a house in New York City costs way more to rent than the same house would cost in a rural town in the middle of nowhere. Land was created for free and existed for billions of years before humans did. No human labor was involved to build or create the earth. So you're not burdening anyone by wanting to live rent-free on land that was created for free in the first place. Boomer landlords are the true parasitic burden on you for putting something that was created for free behind a paywall and then demanding you pay $2,000 per month for something that was created for free. Everything they call Gen Z is just a massive, massive projection. They're the ones who actually want to sit around collecting free rent all day without having to work. They're the ones who are the true parasitic burden to society. They're the ones everyone else has to work for to fund their lazy, unproductive lifestyles. So, don't let anyone lie to you with the illusions of scarcity or engineered poverty anymore. The first step towards building a better new world is shattering the lies and illusion the old one was built upon. Now, you probably remember the video I mentioned earlier, where I give a numbers-based statistical analysis on how we could easily afford a decent universal basic income for everyone right now. If you like this video, you're absolutely going to love that one, and you can check it out right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you there.